Nolan King here for MMA Junkie, and once again, I'm being joined by the man himself. Billy Q is back, and a hectic last week for him. I'm sure he's going to tell us all about it here. But Billy, how are we feeling, man? Can you even, explain to me the emotions that are going through you or have gone through you this past week?
Yeah, man, it's definitely been the most interesting experiences of my life. I'm sure Matt Frevola too. We both kind of went through it this past week. I feel completely healthy and obviously really discouraged that Matt wasn't able to fight, but it was out of our hands. It was out of the UFC's hands, and I'm just happy to be home and to start getting healthy again.
For sure, man. And I guess we'll just kind of take this from the top here. So, you fly out there, you had just fought, and Matt had helped you prepare.
Yep.
You had helped him prepare for his fight with Frank Camacho. So you fly all the way out there to Vegas and you go and take the tests. And I guess what happens from there? You did the swab thing that you did for your fight week. And I guess, obviously it came back positive. But can you just kind of describe that whole process to me?
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously I fought, 2 weeks before this in Vegas. So I already went through the whole process. We went there, you basically get checked for COVID, go into your hotel room and you're supposed to just wait, until basically your results come back. So last time when I fought, I was, negative on the Tuesday that we flew in. And then I was negative again Friday, the day before the fight. So did the fight, flew back, got the win. Basically had 2 weeks, basically was doing some rehab on my shoulder and my back, had some prior injuries going into that fight. So these last 2 weeks, I really wasn't training a ton. I just had family in town. So we were eating dinner out, going out to eat, having some drinks, basically had a weekend off right before Matt's fight. So then we fly out to Vegas, get tested again, go in and pretty much wait in our hotel room, during that Tuesday. And basically waited for the result. And the next day they told me, basically that I had a positive COVID test, which I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a mistake because I felt completely fine. So then at that point, I had the positive COVID test. They said, wait in your room. This was on Wednesday of this past fight week. And they said, just wait in your hotel room. And they came up and gave me another COVID test. And they basically said, just hang out here because I guess in the past 2 weeks before that, they had one person from each week test positive for COVID, and then they retest them and it was negative. So there was 2 false positives. So I basically took the second test, just hoping that it was a mistake. And at that point, me and Matt were in separate. We started off in the same room, but he ended up getting his own room, just to be careful. So at that point, we basically just waited all day Wednesday. And then that night, like Wednesday, it only took probably like 5 hours. They came back and said that one was positive too. And that unfortunately Matt's fight was off. So that was it. And, from there, it just turned into like this wild ride of, basically staying isolated in that hotel and then eventually driving back to Tampa, which took a very long time.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, that is crazy, man. We'll get to that in 1 second. The decision to pull Matt from the fight, was there any considerations, by the UFC to have him stay on the card, or was it one of those things where, I looked at the Vegas rules and stuff, and it didn't really say that the UFC had to pull him. It kind of it was a little gray area. So from your perspective, was there any consideration to have him still fight? Do you know?
Yeah, there was at first. They just had to kind of go through because he already before he came down to Florida, he was living in New York. He lives in New York, and he finished off his training camp in Tampa about 6 weeks ago, even before my fight. So he actually got tested for it then, and he had the antibodies, which basically they told him that he had it before, that his body has produced the antibodies for it. So after I tested positive the second time, he took a second test and actually tested negative again. So he was negative twice. So him showing him he basically showed them that he had the antibody test. They still, since we were staying in the same room for, we were in the same room for that night, the night before, even though we were on totally separate sides of, we had a suite and he had his own room, I had my own room. They still just didn't want to take any chances because, that he was in contact with me.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And, I think that's what's getting lost in the shuffle here too, is obviously there was disappointment, I'm sure, from Matt. He wasn't able to fight. There was disappointment from you. I'm sure you tweeted out that you kind of felt bad, but the health portion of this, I mean, was it scary for you to get that news, forgetting about all the fights and everything else? I mean, this day and age, that's not some words people want to hear, is that you have COVID. Was it kind of alarming for
Yeah.
for you personally?
It was weird, like I said, because they actually told me when they called me and told me, she said, you don't really need to worry yet because they had the 2 false positives before. So, and then I kind of just thought about it. Like, I kind of thought, like, how have I been feeling lately? And I've been feeling fine. Like, the only thing I could say is, like, I've had kind of like a stuffy nose, like at nighttime, like when I go to sleep. But that's pretty typical. I've broken my nose a few times. So a lot of times it feels like it's like deviated anyway. So I wasn't worried as much about my health right away as just feeling bad for Matt, because when they canceled this fight, that sucks, man, because we've both been working so hard. I was able to get my fight. I was able to fight on ESPN and get the victory, and that's basically what we came there for. So I really just felt bad for Matt at that point. And then after they said I was positive, I just kind of felt, I kind of thought about the people that I was in contact with the last few days. I had to like basically just tell them right away, tell my coach and everything, even though I really wasn't in the gym that much, which was a really good thing now. So my coach really doesn't have to worry too much about that. And the craziest thing, my brother and my sister-in-law and my fiance, who obviously lives with me, and my brother and sister-in-law, they visited me the past weekend. They all tested negative too. So I think that I got it on the flight to Vegas, or that I just got it and I just didn't spread it to anyone. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. And are you feeling like, now that we're a few days removed, really in reality, there's nothing to feel guilty about. I mean, this could have happened to anyone. You didn't know that you had it, but you're feeling a little bit better about the situation. I know you said you had talked to Matt and you guys kind of were on the same page. And
Yeah.
Are you feeling a little bit better mentally about it?
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about it. Me and Matt talked about it. I felt bad that it had to be me that got him removed from the fight. But I'm pretty sure the UFC is going to take care of him. And not only that, he didn't get any injuries. He's completely healthy. He was, like 7 pounds away from the weight cut. So he didn't have to cut. He still had to go through quite a process of getting ready for the fight, but he didn't have to lose that last few pounds that are always the worst. And like I said, no injuries. And he's going to hopefully fight again. I think they're looking for August for him, and even August for me too. I think we're both going to be good to go. The UFC basically said, just isolate yourself. The health department and the UFC basically said the same thing. Just isolate yourself, get a negative test, and then take another few days after that negative test just to be certain that you don't still have anything.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. And something that I definitely don't want to glaze over. I know we're moving around here a lot. The drive back home from
Yeah.
Vegas to Florida, that sounds like torture. But can you talk about why you had to do that, what your options were, and what that experience was like?
Yeah, so they told us, so even though Matt tested negative, I tested positive. They basically put us both on, like the no-fly list. So basically our choices were to either stay in Vegas for 2 weeks in that hotel that we were already, I think the UFC said they would have got us an Airbnb. But either way, we would have to basically stay in Vegas and stay isolated the whole time for the next 2 weeks, or drive back to Tampa, or I could have drove back to Tampa. Excuse me. Matt could have technically drove back to New York, but he basically couldn't fly either. So we were basically stuck with our only options were either to stay in Vegas for 2 weeks or just drive back. And I didn't want to stay there any longer, especially since I knew we had to stay isolated. Matt's fight was already off anyway. There was really no chance of him fighting again. So for me, it was a pretty easy decision. It wasn't very fun to do and to drive back and we basically just drove the whole way through. But it was better than staying there for 2 weeks.
For sure. And how long did you say that took?
It took 30. It was supposed to take 35 hours, like stopping for gas and stuff. Probably took like 40 hours.
Yeah, I've never been in a car for that long, and I don't envy you for having to do that.
Yeah. Me and Matt are still cool. We didn't kill each other. It got
That's
a little.
Good. That was my next
moments,
question.
But yeah, we're still cool, and he's quarantining in Marco Island just to be certain. Even though he was negative twice and he has the antibodies, he's planning on getting tested again on Friday, and I'm probably gonna do the same. Like I said, I feel completely fine. I'm eating super clean and taking vitamin C and doing everything I could to get back to 100%. and I'm just going to get a couple negative tests and get back to training when I know it's safe.
One of the procedures that the UFC and the Vegas or the Nevada Commission has in place is contact tracing too. Do you know if they did anything sort of thing like that with you guys? I don't know how long you were there for at the hotel, or really how much of that portion of things that you would even know. But do you know if anything like that happened?
Yeah. No. So they kind of wanted to do something like that. The health commission, or the health department basically in Vegas called us and basically asked us. They said, are you guys going to stay in Vegas? They basically told us the same thing. Your only options are to stay in Vegas or drive back. And I think they wanted to do something like that. I think they wanted to kind of keep track of us in Vegas. But since we told them that we were driving back, that they basically just told us to drive back and to tell the Florida Health Commission, which we did when we got back. So I think they wanted to do something like that. But they said as long as we stayed isolated, that we're good to go. And since we were leaving Vegas, they really had no need to.
Gotcha. And so you touched on a little bit earlier, but kind of my last wrap-up set of questions here is, where do you go from here? I mean, what are the next couple of weeks going to look like? Is there any type of timetable you've been given on, hey, we're expecting you to be negative around this time, or kind of how does this play out from here?
Yeah, so I kind of just did some research. I know most people after testing positive, especially without symptoms, are usually negative within 7 to 10 days. So they want me to take a negative test and then wait another week after that. So I'm planning on getting tested again on probably Thursday or Friday. I feel like I'm healthy, but I felt kind of healthy throughout this whole thing. All I know really is that I was negative 2 weeks ago and that I was positive now. So I basically am just going to wait. I'm basically just going to do the same home workouts that I was doing before, during this lockdown. Go for runs outside, be by myself. And then after a week after a negative test, I would still like to fight in August if I can. I'm feeling pretty healthy. Like I said, I was a little banged up, but I think, after this next week or so, after testing negative, I think I'm going to be healthy and ready to go back to the gym again. And hopefully people don't feel weird about training with me. I don't have any symptoms. So as long as I make sure I'm negative and take another week off and just be really careful, I think I'll be good to go. And it's just one of those things that I'll look back on it, and it's just a weird time. And, I can't imagine getting any symptoms at this point, but I'm obviously just going to be really careful. And there's a few names of people that I want to fight coming. There's a few guys out there. So we're going to see who's ready in August and go from there.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate the time. Before anything else, super happy to hear that you're feeling all right, both physically, mentally, about this whole thing. And really couldn't happen to people always say, a flip comment about it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, but it actually couldn't happen to a much nicer guy. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Wishing you all the best going forward. Hope to see you back soon, and don't get too bored during your quarantine, man.
For sure. No, thanks for having me, brother. I'll see you soon.
Sounds good, Billy.